So we're in part 2 of kingdom plants. So we're going to start with the vascular tissue. This is where we left off in the last video. So vascular tissue is specialized to transport water, minerals, and nutrients. All right, there are two types of tissue that does this, the xylem and the phloem. So the xylem is going to transport water and minerals up from the roots to the other parts of the plant. And then the phloem is going to conduct sugar down from the leaves and stems. So a good way to remember this is phloem carries photosynthetic materials. So remember, photosynthesis produces sugar. The phloem carries sugar. Okay, so phloem and photosynthesis both start with pH. And xylem is going to go up. Okay, it's going to move water and minerals. All right. Okay, so gymnosperms. So gymnosperms are the first seeded plants. Now, these are going to produce cones. Now, you'll notice in this picture that there are two types of cones. This is a male cone. This is a female cone. Okay, now, pine trees can have both. Plants tend to have both genders in them. They have pollen producing and pollen accepting parts. So they're the first to produce pollen or sperm, which is moved by the wind. So this pine cone right here, you can see that it's studded and it's yellow. So when the wind picks up, it's going to carry the spores, the pollen, off of that. So it's needle-like with thick cuticles. All right, so an evergreen pine trees. Okay, if you've ever touched a real Christmas tree, this is what they are. All right. A pine tree is a Christmas tree, all right? They have a naked seed, all right, which means that it's not going to be coated in like a fruit. And the examples are ginkgos and conifers. Again, conifer is a type of pine tree. Pine trees are a type of conifer. And those would be your Christmas tree would be an example. All right. Then angiosperms are the first flowering plants. So flowers are reproductive structures that promote pollination. So it's trying to attract bees and hummingbirds and different type of pollinators to move the pollen or the sperm from one flower to another flower. Okay, now the egg is inside of the flower. And so when they feed off the nectar of the flower, the bee or the hummingbird is going to be transferring the pollen that they got from one flower into the next. So this is going to develop a fruit, which is going to cover the seed to be dispersed by animals. All right. Example, any flowering plant, any plant that gives a flower. So there are two types of angiosperms. So there are monocots and dicots. Okay. So monocots, looking at this chart, are single. All right, they have parallel veins in their leaves. Their flowers often be in multiples of 3, so a lily would be an example. Vascular bundles are scattered throughout the stem. So you'll notice that if you look at this picture, they're just scattered around. And the roots are called fibrous roots, which means that they kind of look like tree branches underground. They're like branched like that. They're not thick like a tree branch, but they look like a tree underground. Now, a dicot has two cotyledons, which are seeds. They are branched veins. So for the leaves, they're going to be more branched than singular. They have floral parts that are often in multiples of 4 or 5 instead of in 3s. Now, the vascular bundles are arranged in a ring. So if you were to cut the stem across, you would notice that there would be circles in a ring around it. And these tend to have a tap root, which means that there's just one root down the center. So carrots would be a tap root. Beets are a tap root, okay? So anything with just one massive root down into the ground is a dicot. All right, so now we're going to go to a part 3 of this presentation. This is the first one and probably the only one that will get to a part 3. So we will see later on, but again, hold off for part 3.